Hey, welcome to this week's video. In this week's video, we're going to talk about fraud. And unfortunately, I see this quite often in small businesses. And if you think about it, if you put a child in a room with a cookie jar, it's awfully tempting if nobody else is around to make sure the child does not eat more cookies than they should be eating. In fraud, it's kind of the same way to think about it. And I'll get into that shortly. But first, fraud comprises of about 88% first-time offender. And the average length of the time to detect could be over a year. And unfortunately, 54% of businesses don't even recover. The average fraud is over $100,000. So these are some sizable numbers. But the good news is there are some ways that you can put controls in your business to prevent and detect fraud. And we're gonna talk about that right now. The first one is to open and review your bank and credit card statement. Now, I know it's 2021, you're probably not receiving them through the mail, but the same concept applies. Get them electronically or get them in the mail and just scan them periodically. I recommend every month if you can, and have this function separate from the accounting department and somebody that is separate from doing the reconciliations. Another one is don't let your bookkeeper reconcile the bank statement. Now, having said that, what I mean by that is if your bookkeeper is processing transactions, writing checks, making deposits, things like that, then it's a good idea to separate the function of reconciling your credit card and bank statements from that work. So have somebody else reconcile those statements. But if your bookkeeper just comes in on a monthly basis and is not involved in those transactions, then it's fine to have your bookkeeper reconcile the bank statements. The key is to separate those functions of the payments, deposits, all the transactions that you incur on a daily basis from the reconciliation process. Set up electronic financial system like QuickBooks is set up. They have built-in features that'll help you if set up correctly, and I see this not set up correctly in a lot of QuickBooks files. But once you get this set up correctly, it can help you with detecting fraud. Another one is separate the mail opening from the accounting function. And again, this goes back to the opening of the bank statements and the credit card statements. But have the mail in general open separate from the accounting function. Like if you receive checks or anything sensitive in the mail that comes in, have this done by somebody that's not in the accounting function, and then they can give those over to the accounting department. If you do receive checks, I would have that person that's separate from the accounting department. I would have them make a log of the checks that are received and that you review that log periodically and then give those checks over to the person that needs to make that deposit, which brings up the next one is don't let the person that does the billing also make the deposit. So a lot of small businesses that I work with, the owner goes and they make the actual deposits or they have somebody else, but make sure that function of the deposits is separate from the person that separate from accounting, but basically the person that does all the reconciliations and processing of transactions. Automate bill payments. This is a good one that you can have a lot of bill payments automatic every month. You can also utilize a bill payment processing that will actually, before any bills get paid, it has to be approved by somebody separate from somebody that's actually writing the checks. Often the owner can approve those bills, and that can be done electronically to make that easier for you. Secure your files. Don't save stuff on hard drive. I see this more often than I like, especially with today's technology with the cloud. Have those backed up, have them in the cloud, so that if something happens, you can easily get those files and you can see those files. Automate expense management. Instead of if you do expense report, utilize an app that like Expensify that will help you in managing that process, but also requiring and easily making digital copies of receipts so that you can see the support that goes with the expenses. A lot of times in expenses, there will be, from a fraud standpoint, there could be where the expense is charged multiple times. Those are things that you have to look out for in expense reports. And having that digitized is going to help in that process. Outsource payroll. I think this is probably one of the big things that I would recommend, especially because the options to outsource payroll now, the cost has gone down quite a bit, and the payroll side, there's a lot of complexities. But having said all that, this is one of the areas where fraud can occur and does occur that can be prevented by, or helped be prevented by, having this function outsourced. And then consider other outsourcing options, such as you may have your CPA or accounting firm come in and review or close your books on a monthly basis, do the reconciliations, for example, to make sure everything looks okay, prepare the reports and do an analysis, kind of overseeing the bookkeeper and that function of the business. You can also outsource a larger portion of your accounting department. That way you can segregate the duties, having other people work on it. That is more cost effective. Other things to consider is educate your employees on what fraud really is, and have them or encourage them to speak freely if they're suspicious of anything. The other thing you can do is set up an anonymous like box where people can put in notes or whatever reporting suspicions of fraud. Often just having that environment and knowing that that's there helps quite a bit. Periodically review vendors and customer files, just the names, not the files, but you can review the list. I've seen a lot of times where fake vendors are set up, or you're paying vendors that happen to be the employee's childcare. Those things that if you review those lists on a periodic basis and ask what those changes are or the new vendors are, that'll help in detecting unusual activity. And do a review of your financials, a thorough review of your financials every month. Do an analysis and question numbers. So in summary, don't assume your risk of fraud is low. I think that this is one area where it's difficult because it's often that I'm finding it's a trusted colleague, it's a trusted bookkeeper that I would never suspect something that happened. Separation of duties helps quite a bit. If you just can do that, and if there's anything that you can take away from this video, is think about how I can separate some of these functions. Protect the cookie jar. We want to make sure that that cookie jar is protected and enjoyable by everybody, and constantly review. So I hope this video was helpful. If you like the video, it'd be awesome if you hit that thumbs up, and you haven't subscribed, I would love to have you a subscriber. Okay, until next time, thank you for watching this video.